Hello YouTube, Jerry Kirkpatrick here, and here we are on the fourth episode of the nickel plating series. And in this video, the last one, we're going to be discussing these 8 coupons that I have that I've got plated, and they are each one processed, prepared in a different way, from just sandblasting all the way up to a highly polished piece. We're going to empty this into the larger tank here, and you'll see how much has been sloughed off of the 2 anodes, the dregs down in the bottom. And after that, we'll go through the anodes themselves. We'll take a look at these, see how much has been used up in everything that we've plated so far. I'll show you another set of anodes that I've got that I used for a while, and then I'll show you the anodes that are in this tank right now. And they're covered. We'll take the cover off and you'll see how much junk is produced by the anodes during their lifetime as they're being used. And you'll see why we want the anodes covered so it doesn't contaminate the plating solution. After we take a look at the anodes, I'm going to show you these 3 different pieces. This one has a socket, a piece of square, and a ball on the end. This is a quick handle for my mill. Here's another one which is just 5/8 square tubing, but it has this piece on the end. And then we have just a T-dolly, which consists of a bar stock, okay, of 1 dimension, and then we have a round on the top. And what we're going to do is go through each of these pieces and see how the square inches of a complete part is, because we need to know how many square inches are in each of the pieces in order to arrive at the amount of amperage that is required for each piece. And I've been asked, how do you figure something that is not all one piece? You know, it has many different dimensions that you have to add up and then arrive at a plating amperage. After that, we'll go through right there at the end of the table how to clean, make sure that the part is as clean as it can be before you start plating. So after I get all of these pieces cleaned, and I'm going to plate them individually. The surface area of all 3 of these are diverse enough that I can't plate them all 3 together. So I'm going to plate 1, 2, 3, so I can maintain the position of each one of them in relationship to the anodes, how they're being introduced to each of the parts, and so I can move the wires so I don't get any strikes. After I get those plated, I'll go through real quick making hangers, both just J hooks and ones that have to be made specifically for a certain shape that might be of some interest. I'll just show you how I hung each of these 3 different pieces, how I moved them to make sure that I didn't get any light spots on the plating. And that'll be it. That will wrap up this whole 4-part series on nickel plating. So here we go with the 8 coupons. Now, I plated all 4 of these at the same time in this small container. So the plating didn't come out very well because sometimes one was hidden behind the other, or it didn't have a clear path to one of the anodes. It was very difficult doing this many pieces in a small container like that. Also, by putting 8 or 4 of them in the container at one time, if I added up all of the surface area of all 4 of them, it would require 4 amps to plate all 4 of these at one time. I turned it up to 8 amps, almost double, well, it was double of what was actually required. I turned it up to 8 amps for a half hour. And what that did was burn the outside edges, and it's especially abusive to a corner. You might want to slow down the process so you don't burn especially the corners, or if you have a sharp edge, an edge is going to be abused also. So that is the reason that these 4 on the top, 1, 2, 3, and 4, are kind of shady. So what we're going to want to look at is just the center of each of the pieces. So the first one, number 1, is bead blasted only. So it hasn't nothing else has been done to it. And this is the effect that you're going to get. And the reason I'm going through these is so when you start to do your plating, you can relate to a surface finish. What you want the end part to look like, you can follow one of these processes. So here we have a very dull, which is bead blasted with an 80 grit only. The second one is bead blasted with an 80 grit, but it was wire brushed with a 6/1000 wire brush, and that looks pretty good. This is what I use mainly if I'm doing almost any part that I just want nickel plated and no rust. I'll just bead blast it, wire brush it, and I'm done. It leaves a very nice and fairly bright surface. Number 3 is bead blasted with the 80 grit bead blast, and then I tumble burred it for 2 hours in stone. You can think pea gravel, that size. So, and this one doesn't look bad at all. This isn't bad because you can bead blast it, throw it in the media, and leave it for a length of time. So bead blasting and tumble burring with just pea gravel, that's a nice surface also. Number 4 is kind of a matte finish, and this was bead blasted with the 80 grit sand, and then Tumblebird in walnut shells for also 2 hours. And that's a little shinier, but this is not a bad surface also. So you can choose which of those 4 would be right for you. The next 4 have been bead blasted and then polished. All 4 of these have been polished. The first one is bead blasted and polished and left alone. This is just how it came out of the solution. After it was plated, I did nothing else. And these 4 were only done 2 at a time. 5 and 6 were done together, 7 and 8 were done together. And they were done for about a half hour to 45 minutes at 4 amps. Actually, it was, about 4 amps, which was a little bit high. And then I slowed it down to 2.5 amps for the last half hour, and it came out pretty good. It still had a little chinking out on the edges, and that might have been because of the excess amount of amperage. Who knows? But I think primarily it's because of a sharp edge. This plating does not like a sharp edge. If this was hit on a belt sander or sanded, made a little bit, this is only 18 gauge, so it's got a lot of sharp corners. Number 6, bead blasted, polished, plated, and then polished again. So this is as shiny as you're going to get. You can polish the piece, plate it, it comes out like this, use a little polish, and you're very close to having a piece like chrome. Piece number 7 is, I did the same thing. I bead blasted it, wire brushed, polished, and then engine turned it, and then plated it, and then polished it again. And the reason I did this one was so you can see that whatever surface you put on to the piece before you do the plating, that's what you're going to see under the plating. It might be a little bit dull. It's not going to be as bright as what you started with. Number 8 and the last one, you can see this one I cleaned just like I would do if I were going to do the plating. And then I took my gloves off and started handling it just with my naked hand. And you can see a big area here, one here, and on the back side you can see exactly where it was touched. So I hope these 8 coupons were some information that you can use. So I'm going to go a little bit out of sequence from what I earlier said. I want to get these pieces out of the way so I can get the lid off of the tank and get this material poured in here so you can see what kind of sediment is in there. So let's talk about surface area. With a T-dolly, we have a piece of rectangle steel and a piece of just round bar stock on the top. So all we need to do is add these up separately. We have 3/8 by 1.5 by 6, which is 23.625 square inches. We have a 3/4 inch round, 4 inches long, and that equals 1.7662. You don't need to go out that far. But anyhow, you would add those together, round them off to get a workable number, and then multiply that times 0.2, and that will give you the number of amps for this particular piece. And as I stated before, if you look in the description below, you will see Caswell Surface Calculator. It's right towards the top. Just click on that and you can use that calculator to figure your square inches. So I've got everything taken off of the top. I took the lid off of the larger tank here. I have a sieve with a paper towel in it. So let me get the camera moved around and we'll dump this container that we've been using all the time into here, and we'll see what kind of gunk is left in the bottom. Okay, here we go. Let's see what kind of gunk is in the bottom of this container. Hope you could see that right at the end. There was just a bunch of stuff, and you can see down in there there's some stuff left over. That is what was left in the bottom, and all of that is from the anodes. So next, let's take a look at the anodes. So here are the two anodes that we made right at the start of this series, and you can notice that this one here and this one here are greatly deteriorated. Also this one here, this one not as bad, but these outside ones were probably used up when we first made the solution. You had the electricity, I guess you can call it, going between these two and creating the plating solution. So you can see that the front area of them are quite used up. This one here you can see is fairly narrow, but the backside isn't nearly as used up as the fronts are. These are some anodes that I've made quite a while ago, and you can see this one it's right down to a point, and so is this one. And the reason this one is used up so much more than this is when I first made my solution, this one was the positive, which displaced the nickel into the solution. This one was the negative, which accepted whatever was displaced from this one here, less the amount that was left in solution. And here we have the anodes that I've been using in my tank for quite some time. And as you can see, they have the covers on them. And let me show you why you want to keep these things covered while they're in the tank. So you can see here what these things look like and how much they've been used. And this is why you want to put some kind of covering on them. So now we have plated the last 3 pieces. This long piece is 12 inches long, 5/8 square material, and the wrench I made for my mill for tightening the vise. Both of these pieces I just used J-hooks for holding it in the tank. I put them in one place just so they're balanced for about 10 or 15 minutes. Then I moved the wires so I didn't get a dark spot on there. This one I couldn't rotate because of the weight underneath. On the longer piece I rotated it. This long piece I took about every 10 minutes I would manipulate it in some way. And I made sure that this little pointy end was not pointed towards one of the anodes to make sure that it didn't get over plated. And if it's over plated, it's going to flake off. So let that be caution to you. On the T-dolly, I hung one end with a cradle like this. The other end I hung this way for a while, and then I moved, in fact I actually turned this over and then moved the wire to this, to the side instead of at the end. And you might want to make your hooks for hanging almost anything a larger radius. And I just use a piece of, I think this is 3/4 inch PVC, and that's what I make my hooks with. And this will fit on my larger, I guess you could call it a bus bar that goes across. And for hanging like a square piece, you can see that it touches only the edges. It doesn't draw a line all the way across the piece. So that's as much as I can give you on hangers. They have to be made specifically for the piece that you're going to be plating. And for cleaning, you need your simple green distilled water to make sure that it's washed off. The Break Clean, spray that and make sure that the water will stand on the piece that you're wanting to plate. The piece has to be very clean, as you saw in that one sample on number 8. You could see the marks that were left on the piece just by putting a bare thumb on it. So that's all I've got on nickel plating. I hope that I covered everything that you need to know to get your nickel plating apparatus, all of the material, and how to produce a nice, clean, and as you can see, bright nickel plate on your product. If you want a bright finish, you've seen how to do that. So thank you very much for watching. Give me a thumbs up, like and subscribe, and ring the bell. Buy me a coffee if you would. If I'm lucky, I'll see you in the next one.